Hi guys, it's Ismail from Zanko Jewelers back with another watch review, and we're not, as you can see, in the typical setup at the office in Berkeley Square. We are actually in Dubai, in Palm Jumeirah, reviewing something very, very special. Today we're looking at a brand that we really haven't covered on the channel before, and that's FP Journe. This one in particular is a very special piece, but we'll get more into that. But first I wanted to delve more into the brand and why it's become so popular. In the last few years, it's grown both in popularity and demand because it's an independent brand that only produces around 1,000 pieces a year or less. The watch we're reviewing today in particular only had one on the market and is now sold by us. So without further ado, let's get into this review. So the FP Journe I have in my hand today is one of 2 minute repeaters that FP Journe have ever created. The other counterpart to this would be the Black Label minute repeater. François-Paul Journe first started with the Grand Sonnerie Souveraine, which was the first attempt at something similar to a minute repeater. This watch was inspired by his need for a new challenge of making one of the world's thinnest minute repeaters and reinventing the wheel for what we consider a minute repeater on the market today. And I can say, just by looking at it, he's done exactly that. If you were to compare it to the 5316, the 6301 and the 5303R from Patek Philippe that we've done before, they're considerably larger than this watch, but we'll get more into the technicals a bit further down the line. What I will say about FP Journe is that they constantly push the wheel and the narrative for interesting and unique movements, and this encapsulates that perfectly. François-Paul Journe's attempt at making one of the world's thinnest minute repeaters is really shown by just how thin this case is. It's 4.5 millimeters in caliber thickness, 8.5 millimeters in case height, and then fit into a 40 millimeter case. Now, there hasn't been, to my knowledge, any other brand that's really achieved such a feat in the luxury world industry. So this by far is really pushing the boundaries. One notable thing about the Calibre 1408 that is inside this watch is that it has 2 patented movements or functions, one of them being the flat gong that was made specifically for this watch, which is patented and protected, so no other brand can use it, and that allows for a very clear and crisp striking sound in such a thin movement. The second patented part of this is the compact striking racks, which allows for it to strike with less space than conventional minute repeaters. Now, in terms of the aesthetics of this watch, François-Paul Journe, like all his other watches, he's gone for a very sleek and unique design. Usually a lot of asymmetry on the case, as you would see on the Optimum and the Resonance on the more entry-level side of FP Journe, even down to the Octolune and Automatic Reserve. This one in particular has a power reserve on the 3 o'clock of the dial. Now, this is based off antique clocks, similar to how those work. So when you wind up the watch, 36 to get to a full wound, this one actually goes down in numbers to 0. This shows the elapsed time from when it was last wound rather than showing the actual power reserve left on the watch. In between the 9 and 10 o'clock, there is an aperture window to see the flat gong strike, which I think is absolutely beautiful. A lot of minute repeaters, you would have to switch onto the case back in order to see the gongs, but this one you can see in the front, similar to the 5303R, which we can link just here. I think that's a really nice feat, and the fact that you have a glimpse of rose gold as the movement is made in rose gold on the face of the dial, I think it just adds a really nice contrast to an otherwise plain looking dial. On the, or in between the 7 and 8 o'clock, there is a small seconds, which I think again is just really nice. The asymmetry I think really works in a balanced manner, and although some people don't really like asymmetric cases, I'm a huge fan of this. I think it really makes for an interesting and intriguing watch to look at on your wrist. Now, in terms of case size, it's 40 millimeters, as mentioned before, and only 8.5 millimeters thick, with very sharp lugs and a round case shape, which I think really falls into the dress watch category of the watch industry. There aren't many watches that look specifically like FP Journe, and I think the more you look into the brand, you'll see that. And this watch epitomizes what I think the brand is really about, which is dainty and elegant looking watches on the wrist. One of the more notable features of the dial, which I absolutely adore, is the FP Journe font for the Arabic numerals. That's from 12 to 11, and it just looks stunning. I think it's very iconic to and synonymous with FP Journe brand. No other brand really has a font like this, and I think it just works so well and aligns well with the brand image. Coinciding with that, it has a blue tempered steel hands which have a nice gloss in the light, and the natural light and the way it plays with the light is just absolutely beautiful. Similar to Cartier, I think is the best comparison to make on the Santos. I know they are very and vastly different watches, but the blue tempered steel really does add a nice contrast to the silvery white dial. When you flip the watch over to the case back, you'll see an 18 karat rose gold case. This is a very iconic thing that François-Paul Journe does on most of his watches that are made in either stainless steel or platinum. He usually uses a contrasting precious metal for the movements. Now the movements are either made in platinum or rose gold. In this case it is rose gold, and it looks absolutely beautiful, especially contrasted with the outer side, which is stainless steel. Now you may be asking why this watch is made in stainless steel and not a precious metal, and that's simply because stainless steel has the best resonating sound other than platinum for the striking gongs on the watch. With the watch being stainless steel, one other notable thing about this watch is it's incredibly lightweight. It's 69.6 grams in weight. So compared to perhaps your typical everyday Nautilus or Daytona, we're talking more or less 100 grams less in weight, which I think makes for a really comfortable wear. It almost feels as if you're not wearing anything when you're wearing this watch. But that's why it's so impactful, because you have something so light and so subtle, but the fact that it has a minute repeater attached to it is really what sells this watch for me. Now, as mentioned, the patented movement Calibre 1408 is made by FP Journe that has 56 hours of power reserve, a function for the minute repeater, the small seconds, power reserve, hours and minutes. The minute repeater is activated just like other minute repeaters by pulling down the striking mechanism on the left side of the case, which you'll see is a nifty little thing for your finger to pull down, and when you let it go, I'm going to pull it closer, but we'll show a demonstration. It's just absolutely amazing, and what this does, just like other minute repeaters, is tells you the hours, the quarters after the hours, and the minutes after the quarters. So really useful. The actual backstory for minute repeaters is the fact that they wanted to know the time in the dark, and that was the reason for making a minute repeater function. Now, in terms of market price, we sold this watch for £390,000. It was the only one available in the market, and to our knowledge today, there is no other available model like this. So you can almost say it's very unique to the market, and with very little comparison, this watch is definitely worth the money. This model is also available on a fully stainless steel bracelet as well as a skeletonized dial. I think I would personally choose the white dial. I like to be subtle when I'm wearing these kind of watches, especially dress watches, so I think this serves that purpose perfectly. The blue alligator strap attached to this watch, I think again adds the contrast, but if you didn't like that, you can also get a black alligator strap for this, or the stainless steel bracelet alternative. The stainless steel is a woven stainless steel bracelet similar to what you would see on an ellipse, just a bit more refined than that, but I would say that makes the watch slightly too robust looking. Where I think it really deserves to be shown off is the dial, and for that reason, I think having it on the leather strap would be the perfect choice. Now, in terms of comparisons for other minute repeaters on the market, well, there aren't really any, and that's one thing I wanted to make a point of. I think for around £390,000, there aren't many minute repeaters you can buy that have such prowess and such uniqueness in the market like this 1408 reference RM. I think there's not really any other comparison to make other than watches that are 500,000 plus, 600,000 plus. If you were to talk Patek Philippe, for example, I would say the closest to this is the 5374G, which we've had before with the blue dial, and then also they have the black dial. And other than that, there really isn't much else on the market, especially something as thin as this watch. Now, while I can't compare Patek and FP Journe as they're very different brands, especially when you're talking numbers in terms of production size and levels, FP Journe in this price range has really knocked it out of the park. I would say if you're more of a Patek fan, then the minute repeaters from Patek are equally as good, but for different reasons. This one I think really stands out on the market just because of its uniqueness, its case slimness, and the fact that it's from a brand that only produce around 1,000 pieces a year. So you can imagine how many of the 1408 caliber they actually make. On a smaller scale, FP Journe make other watches such as the Elegante, which is a quartz movement but has shot up in price all the way from 35,000, which we would have been trading at last year, to about 60,000, 70,000 and 100,000 plus, depending on the dial variation and the condition and year of the watch. This is a really good market indicator for where FP Journe stand at the moment. They only seem to be going one way, and that's up. So I would definitely grab something from FP Journe, if not this minute repeater, as soon as you can. So with that being said, I hope you enjoyed this video and seeing this watch. It's the first FP Journe on the channel, so if you'd like to see more FP Journe, remember to like, comment and subscribe, and comment FP Journe or which model exactly you'd like to see, so that we can make sure to try get it on our next review. But until then, I'll see you in the next review.